The summer sun beat down mercilessly. As I wiped sweat from my brow, the rhythmic squeak of my sneakers against the asphalt echoed in the still air. Every muscle in my body screamed with exertion. But across the court, my younger brother, Daniel, looked fresh as a daisy. Our dad had just finished setting up the new basketball goal, and all day it had been our own personal battleground. We played one-on-one, the score a constant dance between us. But if I'm being completely honest, I was losing most of the time. Daniel, at 17, towered over me by 5 inches. Every jump shot felt like I was shooting over a tall building. When the sun began to settle and the mosquitoes started to bite our legs, our mother called us into the house. We retreated into our house, the familiar creaking of the floorboards greeting our feet like an old friend. I sat down for dinner, the warm smell of Mom's meatloaf filling the air. But Daniel didn't join me. He darted straight to the bathroom like a shot rabbit, slamming the door shut behind him with a muffled thud. He was up to something, I could sense it. It wasn't just the mischievous glint in his eyes when Mom asked him where he was headed. Just gotta use the restroom, he mumbled, his mouth pressed into a tight line in a desperate attempt to suppress a smirk. He always did that when he was doing something he had no business doing, that forced down smile that never quite reached his eyes. I dug into my meatloaf, as if I hadn't seen food in a lifetime. There's something about playing outside all day that turns your stomach into a bottomless pit. Mom's smile flickered slightly across the table as she watched me devour my dinner. How do you like it? She asked, her voice laced with a hint of amusement I couldn't quite place. It's amazing, I mumbled, my mouth full. Truth be told, the meatloaf tasted a little off tonight, but I didn't care. You already know what I'm about to ask, she continued, her playful tone masking a knowing glint in her eyes. May 22nd means only one thing, so don't even try to be slick about it. A cold dread bloomed in my chest. A report card day, the weight of my math grade, a giant, crimson F blooming on that final report card, threatened to hurtle me in the inevitable, uncomfortable conversation with my mother, a confrontation that I much rather not have. Thankfully, Mom hadn't mentioned it earlier. It allowed me one last day to enjoy the summer, because I already knew what failing in the last semester of school meant, summer school. But now, the thought of the conversation gnawed at me. Should I confess? Maybe facing her disappointment now would be better than the constant, churning worry in my stomach. She knew I had the report card, so there was no point in trying to lie. I sighed, dropping my fork next to the bits of meatloaf I had left, and made my way to my room. As I passed the bathroom to get to my bedroom, a strange, quick sound erupted from inside the bathroom. It was a yelp, a sound you'd hear a hurt puppy make, but sudden and sharp. The yelp was followed by a horrifying double whammy of noise, a sharp snap, like a thick stick being broken, and then a deep, heavy thud. It sounded like something large fell, maybe even Daniel himself. The sounds froze me in my tracks. My hand hovered near the bathroom door, listening intently. Silence, an unnatural, suffocating silence. Suddenly, my feet started to feel cold, a wet kind of cold. I looked down, and my breath hitched in my throat. Blood, crimson tendrils of blood snaked out from under the bathroom door, swirling around my feet. Nausea churned in my stomach. Instinctively, I jumped back from the pool of blood, a primal scream ripping from my throat. The sound echoed through the house, shattering the silence. Moments later, my mother came careening around the corner, with my dad close behind, who was jolted awake by my scream. One look at the scene, and Mom's face drained of color. I didn't need to explain. I just stood there, frozen in a tableau of shock, my gaze glued to the blood seeping from beneath the bathroom door. Dad reached the bathroom door first, his hand instinctively going for the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. Locked. They both started pounding on the door, their voices raw with panic, as they screamed Daniel's name. My dad shoved my mom aside. With a strong kick, he slammed his foot into the door. The hinges shrieked in protest, and the door caved inwards, swinging open with a deep thud. I was at an angle, unable to see what my parents were seeing, but the raw terror on my parents' faces spoke volumes. Mom crumpled to the floor, sobs racking her body, as she screamed a name that wouldn't come out. Dad, his face etched with a grief so profound it seemed to age him in seconds. But unlike Mom, he remained standing, his composure a dam holding back a tide of unimaginable anguish. My dad walked into the bathroom, but instantly came stumbling back out, as if whatever he was seeing, whatever had just happened to Daniel, was physically too much for him to keep looking at. He stumbled out of the bathroom, mumbling and crying incoherently. He choked on his words, the same horrifying question looping over and over from his mouth. What happened? Oh God, what happened? Driven by a morbid curiosity that warred with my terror, I inched towards the bathroom, grazing my back along the wall, trying to put as much distance between myself and the door as possible. My parents' reaction had planted a seed of dread, a chilling premonition that made me want to just turn around and run, but I just needed to know what it was. What happened to my brother? I peeked inside, and a sight met my eyes that horrified me to my core. But what truly baffled me was how what I was seeing could even be possible. My brother's body was completely limp, sprawled on the ground like a doll. He lay face up, or rather, body up, because his head was torn from his neck. The skin of my brother's neck was marred by a jagged line of torn flesh, exposing the deeper layers of dermis and subcutaneous tissue. Arterial blood gushed from the open wound, spattering the surrounding area in a macabre display of crimson. The neck bones, once hidden beneath layers of skin, fascia, and muscle, were exposed, their bony surfaces glistening an unnatural white. A cervical vertebrae, a twisted mess, their alignment grotesquely distorted, like a bowl of limp spaghetti. The veins hang flaccid and lifeless, their lumens empty, their contents spilled onto the ground. The tendons dangle like frayed strings, their connections to muscle and bone severed, their purpose now rendered useless. Suddenly, I noticed something in Daniel's hand, a bottle. Swallowing the fear of moving closer, the fear of stepping in my own brother's blood, I focused my eyes on this bottle, a desperate attempt to block out the horrific scene around me. In a total shot in the dark, I felt like this bottle could mean something, anything that could shed light on what just happened to my brother. I was desperate for answers. Ignoring the sharp sting of tears welling up, I grabbed the bottle from his lifeless hand. In that same moment, a bear hug engulfed me, and my dad swept me away from Daniel. He set me down outside the bathroom, the bottle still clutched tightly in my hand. "I need you to be brave for me, buddy," my dad said, holding back the emotion in his voice. "We need to call the police right now." Though my vision blurred with tears, I knew from his strained voice that he already knew explaining what happened to Daniel would be really difficult, because none of us knew what happened. The scene outside our house became a blur of flashing lights and shouting voices. A swarm of police officers descended, their movements practiced and urgent. Before I knew it, cold metal clicked around my wrists, the bite of the handcuffs, a stark contrast to the growing numbness in my brain. Murder, that was the accusation hanging heavy in the air, a word that felt utterly inadequate to describe the grotesque scene I'd witnessed in the bathroom. This was something else entirely, something horrifying and inexplicable. They herded us all into separate squad cars, the silence broken only by the rhythmic whoosh of sirens. At the station, the sterile interrogation room felt like a world away from the chaos at home. Questions came rapid fire. What happened? Did we see anything? Did we know anything about the incident? My answers were a jumbled mess, a broken record replaying the same horrifying scene over and over. None of us could explain what had happened, only described the aftermath etched into our very souls. Police had no evidence against us, so we were eventually let go. The house became a morbid monument, sealed off with yellow police tape. Detectives swarmed the scene. Forensics teams followed, their task a grim cleanup of a horror we couldn't even begin to understand. We, the displaced remnants of a shattered family, moved at my Aunt Jeannie's house. The silence there was suffocating, a stark contrast to the cacophony of emotions within me. My mother retreated into a shell of grief, her voice a silent echo in the halls of her own memory. My father sought solace at the bottom of a bottle, the amber liquid a poor substitute for the son he'd lost. The world spun on its axis, oblivious to the gaping wound ripped into our lives. We were left to navigate the wreckage, each of us adrift in a sea of our own private hell. I found myself sitting alone in one of the spare bedrooms in my aunt's house. Sleep was a distant dream, replaced by a churning mix of fear and morbid curiosity. My eyes darted to the small bottle in my hand. The label on the bottle read Project Neuralash in bold, black letters. Above it was an image, an eagle, its talons bound with blue and red ribbons, perched beneath a circle filled with 14 stars. The logo made me remember something. It had been a while, years even, but I knew exactly where I'd seen the image before. My dad never told us where he worked. His schedule was a chaotic dance of early mornings and late nights. But on the rare occasion I glimpsed him leaving, a glimpse of that very same logo on his work uniform. A cold dread snaked its way through me. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and the picture they painted was terrifying. The cool night air slapped me in the face As I stepped outside of my aunt's house, the smell of stale cigarette smoke hanging heavy in the air. Dad sat hunched in a rickety lawn chair, the flickering orange glow of the cigarette the only light illuminating his face. It was a face I no longer recognized, etched with lines of worry and a dark despair I'd never seen before. "Dad." My voice sounded rusty in the silence. He looked up with a start, his eyes red-rimmed and vacant. "Huh," he grunted, a single syllable that spoke volumes about his state. I took a deep breath, the small bottle in my pocket burning a hole through the fabric. "There's something I found." My voice faltered. "What is it, son?" He took a long drag from his cigarette, the ember briefly illuminating the haunted look in his eyes. "It was in the bathroom," I blurted. "On the floor, next to Daniel." Hesitantly, I pulled out the small bottle, my fingers trembling slightly. He snatched the bottle from my hand, his movements faster than I expected. The lines on his face seemed to deepen, etching a mask of raw terror. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, his eyes darted to the image of the logo on the bottle. Recognition dawned on his face, swift and brutal. The blood drained from his skin. It was as if a dam had burst within him, unleashing a torrent of raw terror. In that moment, I saw a truth so horrifying it took my breath away. Without a word, he bolted out of his chair, the metal scraping harshly against the concrete patio floor. His frantic movements echoed the tempest brewing behind his eyes, and a primal fear pulsed in my veins, the fear of a son witnessing the world shatter around his father. "Go inside, Sam," he rasped, his voice tight with a barely concealed panic. "Everything's going to be fine. Just don't worry about this." His words rang hollow, a stark contrast to the fear etched on his face. "Don't worry about it." My voice trembled. "How can I not worry? Dad, what's going on? What happened to Daniel?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He simply turned his back on me, the bottle clutched tightly in his hand. His entire body seemed to vibrate with a suppressed energy. I said, "Go inside." He repeated, his voice a low growl. "This isn't something you need to be involved in." But as he spoke, I saw it. The flicker of helplessness, the tremor in his hand despite his attempt to appear strong. The bottle clearly held a message far more terrifying than I could even grasp, and my dad, for reasons unknown, seemed to know something about it. He may have told me not to worry, but there was no way I could obey. The horrifying truth about my brother and the bottle I found had already begun to unravel the threads of my reality. Stepping back inside, the house seemed to swallow me whole. The air hung heavy with a suffocating silence. My mom remained in their shared room, a ghost of her former self. Medication now kept her tethered to the bed, a silent prisoner in her own body. The vibrant woman who used to laugh and scold us was gone, replaced by a hollow shell. Her mind, once sharp and witty, was a desolate wasteland. The image of Daniel, forever etched in her vacant eyes, was a constant reminder of the life ripped away from us. It was a picture I couldn't unsee, a silent scream echoing in the emptiness. That was my mother. Exhaustion finally claimed me. I stumbled to my own spare room and collapsed onto the bed, the tears I'd been holding back for so long erupting in a torrent. Hours melted into one another as I grieved, the raw ache in my chest an unwelcome companion. A hot shower helped wash away the grime, but couldn't cleanse the image of Daniel's body from my mind. It replayed on a loop, a horrifying scene I wished I could erase. Yet, another image haunted me, the logo on the bottle, a stark reminder of my dad's work uniform. Sleep came eventually, a heavy thing dragging me under, but it was short-lived. I jolted awake, heart hammering in my chest. A dark silhouette stood in the room, my dad. The dim light softened his features, but sleep still clung to my vision. He leaned closer, his touch a feather-light kiss on my forehead. "I love you," he whispered, his voice thick with a hidden emotion. "Look after your mother." It was a plea, a burden he placed upon me. Then, he was gone. A faint creak echoed through the house, the front door of my aunt's place, opening and closing with a soft thud. Had I imagined it all? The lingering warmth on my forehead told me otherwise. My father had been here, and the weight of his unspoken truth settled heavily on my shoulders. He was gone, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a chilling certainty. The logo, the bottle, his absence, they were all pieces of a puzzle far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. That was 6 months ago. My father hasn't come back since. A few months after my dad left my aunt's house, my mother and I were finally permitted to return to our home. When the authorities deemed it safe for us to return, the bloodstain was the first thing I noticed upon stepping back into the bathroom. It was a small, unyielding circle, a constant, silent reminder of the brother I had lost. Today, though, I found something. In my dad's office, hidden beneath a jumble of clothes, was a laptop. I'd been searching the house for answers, and I think I just found them. My fingers trembled as I navigated the dusty labyrinth of the laptop's files. Then, a single folder jolted me. No label, just a stark black icon that sent a shiver down my spine. With a bated breath, I clicked it open. A torrent of cryptic files spilled onto the screen, each name a whispered secret. One in particular snagged my attention, Project Neuralash. My mind raced back to the image of the bottle, the chilling logo etched into its surface. Curiosity, laced with a prickle of dread, propelled me forward. I double-clicked the file, and a wave of documents, images, and data flooded the screen. It was a rabbit hole, a digital vault overflowing with classified information. Research logs, internal memos, and chillingly detailed reports, all centered around a single, horrifying project, Neuralash. Panic clawed at my throat as I saw my father's name woven throughout the files. He wasn't just a researcher, he was deep in the heart of this clandestine operation, a key player in the development of a potent, government-sanctioned bioweapon. The documents explained that Neuralash, a weaponized toxin designed to orchestrate a symphony of suffering within its victim. Uncontrollable muscle spasms, racking the body, causing the neck and head to spin uncontrollably, until the vertebrae tears, resulting in self-decapitation. Paralysis, or worse, awaited those that got exposed to this pathogen. The reports detailed the potential for contamination, the ways this pathogen could infiltrate the body, but the most chilling section focused on the mechanism of action. Neuralash targeted the central nervous system, disrupting the dance of nerve signals. Its primary targets were the neck and spinal muscles, a strike designed to leave its victim a broken marionette, forever frozen in a grotesque tableau of pain. I then came across an email exchange between my father and an anonymous colleague. It was a message from my father to his colleague, expressing his desperate decision to protect his family. Subject: urgent neurotoxin missing. Dear Ryan, my hands shake as I type this. The weight of my decision sits heavy on my chest, but my conscience is clear. The recent security breach at the lab made it horrifyingly clear. Neuralash cannot be contained. We're playing with fire, and I fear the flames are about to engulf us all. I've done something drastic. I've taken a small sample of the neurotoxin. Don't try to retrieve it. I've hidden it somewhere, but I won't leave it there for long, just until I can find a better place to hide it. I know you must think I'm betraying you, but my family, their safety is my #1 priority. Neuralash in the wrong hands is a nightmare beyond comprehension. This isn't about abandoning the mission. Consider it a desperate gamble, a chance to buy time, to find a way to dismantle this weaponized nightmare at its core, to expose the truth before it's too late. Please, Ryan, if you receive this, understand. You have a family too. Trust me, this is the only way to keep them safe. For now, silence is our only weapon. I'll find a way to contact you again, but for now, our families come first. Yours sincerely, John. The realization pressed down on me. The bathroom, the twisted remains of my brother, the chilling bottle with its cryptic logo, all of it clicked into place. Project Neuralash, this government-sanctioned nightmare, was the twisted answer, weaving through the tapestry of my brother's tragedy. My father, his disappearance wasn't random. It was the consequence of his actions, a desperate bid to shield us from the fallout of his own guilt. The email spoke of unimaginable consequences, and a terrifying picture emerged. My father, a man burdened by a secret so heavy it shattered him, slamming the laptop shut. A single question echoed in the silence. Would my father ever come back home? Maybe someday, but a certainty settled in my gut. How could he? I mean, how could any man come back home after making such a horrible and stupid mistake? The poorly hidden bottle, the neurotoxin it contained, it was all my father's doing. He'd brought this danger into our home, and it had taken Daniel from us. The image of my dad in my room, that night at my aunt's house, as he told me to take care of my mother, his tear-filled eyes, his trembling hands. It wasn't just fear I saw then, it was guilt. The guilt of a man who failed to protect his family, who brought a deadly secret under our roof, and hid it poorly, leading to the death of his own son, the death of my brother. My father hadn't vanished on a mission, or run from punishment. He couldn't bear to face the consequences of his actions, the weight of his son's death hanging heavy on his conscience. He left, consumed by guilt, a self-imposed exile for the unforgivable mistake that tore our family apart.